I've created a brand new recovery project, and I can see the file name and path for that project here at the top. Let me just introduce the console a little bit. You'll notice there's a list view at the top. It shows me every domain controller and some other data near the top. I have Acme DC1 highlighted here, so down below I have the details for Acme DC1. Here's the recovery method he's going to use, and there's various credentials which we have not filled in yet. To those in just a moment. On the toolbar here, you can see I have verify settings, start, continue, or cancel recovery. Backup criteria, if I needed to select a different date range, I can click on this and decide on a date range for backups to select. Configuring alerts, if I wanted to alert during the recovery steps or the operations that are happening, or pause, I can set up those alerts. And then there's also schedule verify settings. The next line here shows a summary of the recovery project itself. What mode am I using? What's the name of my forest? How many DCs do I have to process? How many domains do I have to process? And then in the list view, you can see a great deal of information, whether the server is a global catalog, what recovery method is being used, the IP address of the target computer, the domain, FSMO roles, site, and what backups are selected and how old are those backups. All right, we're going to see those change as we do different methods, and I show you the different recovery methods in the process. The next thing to look at is recovery project settings. So I'm going to click on Forest Recovery, and here you can see recovery project settings came up. I could also click on the Tools menu and go to Recovery Project Settings. And you can see there I've got the same thing. I've got my recovery project settings showing. I'm going to take the time here to enter credentials for each one of these domains, default credentials, both for the domain, for a local username and password on a server if I had a target server I was using, say for CleanOS recovery, and the DSRM password. Now this could be the current DSRM password, or it could be a password that you want to set. It does not have to be the current password. You don't need to know your DSRM passwords. And the console does let you reset those passwords. So we'll see that in a moment. I'm just going to pause the video while I fill these fields in. And now you can see that those credentials are entered. If I highlight each one of these domains, you can see credentials down here for each one. Now that didn't change anything yet. Let me show you a little bit more on this recovery project settings first. If I wanted to pick a DC for authoritative restore of Sysvol, I can select that here. But by default, we use the PDC emulator. So there is no real reason to change this unless your PDC emulator is gone. And then on the Global Catalogs tab, by default, we picked Keep GC Intact. Now that's a change in 10.2. We used to always say rebuild the GC and advertise normally. But because Recovery Manager has such tight control over backups, it's far faster and far better to set the Keep GC Intact and not worry about lingering objects, unless, of course, you want to be a Microsoft purist, then you could change this back if you want to, but we'll keep that GC intact. On the Notifications tab, you can set up an email address to an SMTP server, and that would let you use things like alerts within the process. Can I do that? If you're dealing with firewalls and you want to specify a specific TCP port for your forest recovery agents to talk to, and the management agent that goes on each domain controller, you can do that on this tab. By default, we use RPC dynamic ports. And on the Infrastructure tab, if you are doing CleanOS recovery up to Microsoft Azure, here's where you would enter your tenant, your subscription, locations, etc., and credentials, so that you'd be able to have Recovery Manager create those VMs for you on the fly. So we won't get into those details here, but hopefully we'll see those in a later video. So I'll apply these changes and then click OK. And you'll notice it didn't change much. I still have exclamation points over here. Now I need to make sure that I'm using those default access credentials. So I'm going to highlight all my DCs, and I just do a shift click. Well, I've got the first one highlighted. Click on the bottom one with a shift click, and then I can check the box here. And you can see those credentials now are filled in. Now, I'm not using the methods I want yet, so I'll get to that. Let's do that next.